Let's focus then on Law 12. So we have the laws of the game. It is a handball offence if a player touches the ball with their hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. By having their hand arm in such a position, the player takes a risk of their hand arm being hit by the ball and being penalised. Should we show a little picture as well, reminder of where the handball is? So there we go.
Was that drawn by a 6-year-old?
Yes, I think it may be. Your grandson drew that.
This law, just reading this law again, infuriates me. Because
OK, right. Can I bring in Mark? Because otherwise it's just going to appear.
Yeah, no, you can do as you want.
Mark Clattenberg's here, Frank LeBeuf.
Oh, I thought you meant Mark Ogden. It's much better with Oggy.
No, Clats is here as well.
No, but I'm just going. The reason I say that is because part of that when it says, and I can't remember what the whole thing said.
Which I've written it down.
Your body position is justifiable by your actions.
Yes.
Right. Go back to the FA Cup final at the weekend. If that's the case, and I thought the Jack Grealish handball was a penalty.
Yes.
Because his arm was in the air, but if the laws are saying that wasn't a consequence of him trying to defend that,
yes,
I would say that's wrong.
Yep.
I don't think there's much Jack Grealish could have done. If that's the law.
Player's body movement for that specific situation.
Right. Well, that specific situation with Grealish, really, as he's backtracking and jumping backwards, there's nothing, unless he tapes his left arm to his side, the momentum is going to take him through. Now, again, when the hand was raised, I thought it was a penalty, but the laws would say that's arguable. That's what I'm saying. As a player, from a player's point of view, I think it was very, very difficult for Grealish to defend against Wan-Bissaka there without that left arm trailing and going above his head. That would mean, by law, really, you could argue that wasn't a penalty.
Mark Clattenberg is with us, and of course, Mark, normally when you're with us, we go through different incidents, but there were quite a few of these handball situations at the weekend were very much debatable. And the thing is, like, you read the law, and it's almost as asking you to be almost physicists as well, to try and work out what movement is natural, what isn't. How would you, as a referee, who's refereed, apparently you told me, at the top level, how do you change this? How do you fix this?
I think the problem is that I don't think any referee in the world likes the handball law. I think because the law is very subjective, what's making your body bigger, what's a referee? Because when we looked at this law many, many years ago, before they started altering it, it was that the handball had to be deliberate, and the referee never knew if a player was going to deliberately handle the ball or not. What we were given guidance, and it's not changed since, even though they've slightly tweaked the wording of the law, is that if a player puts his hand or arm above his shoulder, the referee would whistle a penalty. What the argument was from the player's side was that there might be a fraction of a second where jumping up for the ball, maybe your arm could be above your shoulder. I just think Jack Grealish, for me, is a penalty under the current law. And what we need to probably look at is that an action of defending the ball? Probably. Jack Grealish has just jumped for the ball. He's not looking at it. That's not sometimes an argument if he's trying to make his body bigger. But that hand is clearly above his shoulder. And people will say that's probably naturally jumping. He's got to look at, in that situation, is if we follow the criteria that's been set, the hand is above the shoulder, get the consistency. I wasn't surprised that it was being a whistle, the penalty. But this is where the great debate comes. And I think UEFA and FIFA are now have their task force to work with IFAB to try and change this law, to try and get more understanding from the footballing world and get referees consistency. But as we know, IFAB won't meet till February, which is next year. So therefore, this law will not be changed next season. It will probably be looked at the following season when the new IFAB do meet in February next year.
How would you rewrite this law if you had the opportunity, Mark?
It's a really difficult one, Dan, because how do we define every situation? Because if you're making your body bigger, how far do these arms have to come out before you define he's making me body bigger? So how are we going to get consistent? We either whistle every handball, which used to happen in the Spanish league many years ago, or do we look for some criteria? Because if you don't find a common criteria, you're going to have so much inconsistencies week in, week out. I believe if we put the arms above the head, I always thought I'm quite comfortable if given that as a penalty, because I don't believe players need to put the arm above the head. Could Jack Grealish have avoided that? I believe he could. I also believe other players just deliberately don't even look at the ball, turn the body, put the arms out, and that's an act of making your body bigger. But the argument is he's not looking at the ball. So you've got all of these aspects that the referee's got to look at, and will never, ever agree with this handball law. We'll still be arguing about it the next season, the next season, and the next season, because I can't believe that we'll find every situation and put it within the context of the law.
What would you do, Frank? How would you fix this?
How I fix it? I would change the law, because I think it's the most stupid law I ever read just now. In the two first sentence, you have the words twice, unnaturally. Saying that somebody who's jumping will be, because of his arms are like that, he's going to be in a unnatural position, which is wrong. That guy who made that rule never jumped in his life, I think, because if you look at people doing high jumping or long jumping, they use their arm to get the balance. So therefore, when you jump, and what Grealish did, and we're going to see it with Kroos, we're going to see that after. We're going to see that after. Those guys, they jump, so they need their arms. I think I will fix it, because I know football is made of interpretation, and we have to give the lead to the referee, and the referee has to feel if it's intentional or non-intentional. And clearly, on the two action, it's non-intentional. They don't just try to jump. They don't try to block the ball. They just try to jump to get the ball. And you have to know football. Maybe you have to play football, or you have maybe the experience of Mark to understand that the guy don't try to get the ball with his hand. Don't try to block anything, to make his body bigger. He just try to jump, and he needs his hands, his arms, to balance his body. It's a natural reflex. And dancers, they do that. High jumper again, long jumper, they do that. And football players should jump with their maybe arms in their or hands in their pocket. It's impossible. So because it's an interpretation, I think referees should be advised to call a penalty if they only feel it was intentional. Otherwise, they shouldn't call it a penalty.
It's very difficult.
The problem with the intentional thing is then you're asking a referee almost to be a mind reader, and like, did he mean that?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult scenario to do that. And I know what they've tried to do here, but it has still clouded the issue. And I can understand why Paul Tierney gave the penalty. And I agreed with that decision at the time, but the laws somewhat contradict it a little bit. Straitjackets.
Yeah, playing straitjackets?
I mean, basically, there's no way you are going to get around this law that's going to make it 100% bulletproof. And the only way you get around this law and make it bulletproof, and this can never work and should never work, is say any ball that hits the arm is a penalty. Now that's just crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the only way to get around it. Right? Now nobody in their right mind would ever want to see that, because there'll be 10 penalties a game. But really, there is no other way. There is no other way to make this non-subjective. There is not, unfortunately.
Last word on this to you, Mark.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing now is a complete change of how players are defending the ball, because now you're actually seeing an even more unnatural position for defenders is where they put their hands behind the back, because what they do want to do is give the referee a chance to award a penalty. And I think...
Yeah, but Mark, I'm sorry, Mark. Mark, I'm sorry to cut you off about what you're just saying. Yes, the player, they can put their arms behind their back if they don't jump. So they do that. We see that. That's a new natural position, let's say, because they know, so they are alerted to that. But when you jump, Mark, have you ever jumped, with your arms behind your back? It's pretty hard.
Do it now.
The problem, Frank, when I played football, I didn't do long jump or high jump. I just played football. But we've got this scenario where I believe we'll never, ever get that consistency, because you'll have that jump. How far do you put your hand out? Do we keep it close to the body? We've got so much, and I feel for the referees. I was, a referee many years ago. We still had this same law. Yes, they've tweaked the wording, but it was still the same law. And nobody was comfortable with it, because you see one decision given one week, you see completely the opposite next week. And that's what infuriates everybody, because we're just lacking that consistency. And I'm still not sure, even with the criteria that they give the referees, the arm above the shoulder, at least give us some reference point that at least we had some sort of consistency. But like we look at Jack Grealish, we've got so many people in the game criticising the decision. It's not the referee's fault. It's the actual law and how it's written. So let's give the referees some slack sometimes. They're just trying to apply a law. And it's interesting. If he didn't give the penalty on Saturday, Paul Tierney, he would have still got criticised. He was in that grey zone where he's going to get criticised from one team for giving it, and he's going to get criticised for not giving it. It's a really difficult decision. And as why it's subjective, it's always going to be criticised. And I think players putting their hands behind the back take that risk out. And IFAB will look at it again in February, and they'll come up with some different words. But it doesn't matter how different them words are, it's still never going to solve this issue. And we're still going to see it year after year.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.